Hello everybody, welcome back to Misconceptions in History, and today we are going to be starting off my new series on famous aircraft, and we're going to kick it off with the aircraft introduced to me by my father because it's his favorite, the P-40 Warhawk, also known as the Tomahawk and the Kitty Hawk, and I'll go into that in just a minute. Now the P-40 is an iconic aircraft, especially for what is known as that shark mouth on it, and this was a really interesting design, very unique, and is very much a part of the appeal of the P-40, but there's so much more to this aircraft than that. Now, personally, my introduction to this aircraft came from the Steven Spielberg movie, 1941, in which John Belushi pilots a P-40. However, most people know this aircraft because of a group known as the Flying Tigers, as this was the mainstay, the main aircraft for them. But the aircraft itself has a really incredible history. It actually started off as the Curtiss P-36 Hawk. Now, the P-36 Hawk was actually a contemporary aircraft designed in the 1930s to compete with the likes of the Hawker Hurricane and the Messerschmitt Bf-109. And this aircraft was designed with the purpose of being part of a new generation of combat aircraft that were sleek. These were monoplanes designed specifically for air-to-air combat. Now, this aircraft saw almost no fighting in World War II, and in fact, the only credited fight that these aircraft were ever in was at the attack at Pearl Harbor, in which they're credited with managing to shoot down 2 Japanese Zeros. Now, because of how solid this airframe was, 3 variants were made, the first being the YP-37, and this was basically a P-36 that had its fuselage lengthened and its cockpit moved rear. The next variant was known as the XP-40, which essentially replaced the radial engine of the P-36 with a V-12 Allison and changed the location of the radiator. And the final variant was the XP-42, which was essentially an enlarged version of the P-36. Now, the military ended up going with the P-40, basically due to the fact that they saw a lot of potential in its top speed and maneuverability. Now, at the start of the war, this aircraft was actually incredibly good against earlier aircraft, especially at turning at low speeds. However, it was not a high-altitude fighter and couldn't compete with later aircraft. But that didn't stop it from being the third most produced aircraft of World War II, with numbers at almost 14,000 aircraft produced, only being beat out by the P-51 and the P-47. And it was actually operated by multiple nations. Now, this aircraft was operated all around the world. It was used by the Free French, the Soviets, the British, and both the Soviets and the British actually called it by its export name, which was initially known as the Tomahawk, until the later models, the P-40Ds, became known as the Kitty Hawks to the British and the Soviets. And it pretty much fought in every theater of war, being mainly favored in Africa, the Mediterranean, and Asia, due to the fact that German aircraft outmaneuvered and outflew it, and it was just seen as a total loss to try to go head-to-head with them. And because of this, it's probably one of the few aircraft ever created that can claim so many international aces. Besides the United States, countries that piloted the P-40 to ace status include Australia, England, New Zealand, South Africa, the Republic of China, and even the Soviet Union all have aces that flew the P-40. Now, sadly, even with all of this success, most nations began replacing the P-40 around 1944 or so, in favor of much faster aircraft such as the P-51, the F-4U Corsair, the P-47. Now, that wouldn't be the end of the life of the P-40, as many nations continued to carry them, typically as a reserve aircraft or training aircraft. However, some nations such as Brazil operated them as a mainstay of their fleet until 1958, when Brazil retired the very last active duty P-40. Now, because of the legacy and the absolute love for this aircraft, quite a few of them still remain in existence to this day, with about 28 in current airworthy condition and an additional 36 airframes actually under restoration around the world. And there are still some airframes being recovered and found to this day, one of the most recent one being an airframe found in the Egyptian Sahara Desert in 2012. So there we have it for today. Just a quick look at the P-40. While it doesn't have, the imagery that may be conveyed by something like a P-51 or a P-38, its importance can't be ignored. This aircraft was the beginning and that transition to high-speed fighter aircraft and pursuit aircraft that the United States would need during World War II. And while its legacy may be its shark mouth or its connection to the Flying Tigers, its importance to history can't be ignored. So that's it for today. I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you all the next time.